Welcome to the fifth video in this 7-part series. In this series I am covering what I currently believe to be the sequence of signs and events that will occur between now and the second coming of Jesus Christ. This video series has been prepared from the perspective of a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. If you are not a believer of this faith, you are still more than welcome to listen in. Hopefully you will find some concepts that will improve your faith in the second coming of Jesus Christ. If you have not yet viewed parts 1 through 4 of this series, please go back and watch them first, because they convey several foundational elements for this video series. The links to parts 1 through 4 can be found in the description section below. To mention what was discussed in previous episodes, in part 1 I covered the signs and events related to the times of the Gentiles. In part 2 I covered the signs and events related to the preparation for New Jerusalem. In part 3 I covered the signs and events related to the actual establishment of New Jerusalem. And in part 4 I covered the signs and events related to the gathering of people to the Church of the Firstborn. In this video we will cover section 5, the climax at Old Jerusalem. In subsequent videos we will cover signs and events related to the other points in this list. Section 5, the climax at Old Jerusalem. With the conclusion of the approximately 21-year period of respite that was the half-hour of silence, the earth moves once again into another period of tribulation and turmoil. This time, however, the focus is on Old Jerusalem in Israel. This section of events will likely take place in the space of 7 years. The 7 years will further be broken into 2 parts of 3.5 years each. Most of the signs in this section will come from the book of Revelation in the New Testament of the Bible. An important point to note here is that not all chapters of the book of Revelation are in chronological order. There are many interludes, flashbacks, and flash-forwards throughout John's narrative. However, the contents of Revelation chapters 7, 8, 9, and 11 are all described in chronological order as seen in vision by John the Revelator. We can thus use the contents of these chapters as points of reference for our second coming sequence. Sign 42, calamities number 1 through 4. In part 4 we established several signs based on the contents of Revelation chapters 7 and 8. We left off at Revelation chapter 8 verse 1 with the opening of the 7th seal time period and the beginning of the half-hour of silence. In the very next verse, Revelation chapter 8 verse 2, we are introduced to 7 angels. These angels stand before God and each are given a trumpet. In the rest of Revelation chapter 8 and in Revelation chapters 9 and 11, John the Revelator describes various calamities that occur when each of these angels blows their respective trumpets. In Revelation chapter 8, verses 7 to 12, John explains the calamities that accompany the first 4 trumpets. Revelation chapter 8, verses 7 to 12. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire, mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third part of trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up. And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood. And the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. So as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. A very important question here is, did the trumpet calamities occur during the half-hour of silence, during the ministry of the 144,000, or are they confined to the period of time after the half an hour of silence is over, but before the second coming of Jesus Christ? Eschatological thought is divided on this point. Some feel that these calamities occurred during the half hour of silence, and that is why the 144,000 high priests need to be consecrated, so that they will be unaffected by the calamities as they fulfill their ministry. Others feel that the half hour of silence is a full respite from all kinds of tribulations. The concept here is that the silence infers that there will be no trumpets being blown, and therefore the trumpet calamities would not occur during this time. The heavens are literally silenced from pouring out judgments upon mankind. thus giving the 144,000 the ability to perform their ministry among the people. It would be quite difficult for people to focus on accepting the gospel message if they're having to deal with life-threatening calamities. I do not know enough at present to make a definitive judgment on which side is correct, but I lean towards the idea that these calamities occur after the half-hour of silence is complete. If this is indeed the case, then the trumpet calamities will likely be occurring throughout the 7 years of this time period. Sign 43, the Antichrist. With this sign, we are jumping ahead a bit in the Revelation narrative. Although John the Revelator does not mention the Antichrist specifically until chapters 11 and 13, he will play a key role in the next sign, sign 44. As such, we will add his appearance in the second coming sequence at this point. Revelation chapter 13, verses 4 and 5. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. The beast, in verse 4, is the Antichrist. In verse 5, John tells us that the Antichrist will be given power for a period of 42 months, which equates to 3.5 years. Thus we can anticipate that the Antichrist will come to power during the first 3.5 years of this 7-year period. We will not speculate in this video on the identity of the Antichrist. We will only discuss that he will be a very influential person on the world stage. He will be charismatic and popular. His words and actions will deceptively influence many of the elect to stray from their testimonies, and he will wreak havoc and chaos in the world. Sign 44, a 7-year peace treaty with Israel. In addition to John the Revelator, the Old Testament prophet Daniel also saw this time period. In Daniel chapter 9, he provides information on a very important event, a peace treaty. Daniel chapter 9, verses 26 and 27, starting partway through verse 26, And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he, the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. We can be sure that the he in verse 27 is talking about the Antichrist, because this he refers to the nearest antecedent in the previous verse, which is the prince that shall come. This individual, the Antichrist, and his people will come to destroy the city of Jerusalem, which we will see shortly in sign 48. The important event here is that the Antichrist will confirm a covenant, or in other words, he will essentially sign a peace treaty with Jerusalem for 1 week. This has been termed a prophetic week, and in ancient Hebrew tradition, it is another way of saying 7 years. So there will be a peace agreement between the Antichrist and Israel for 7 years. We stopped in the middle of Daniel chapter 9, verse 27 earlier. Let's read the rest of verse 27 for further details. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. And in the midst of the week, he, the Antichrist, shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So, in the middle of this 7-year period, after 3.5 years, the Antichrist will break this peace treaty and will lay siege to Jerusalem. We will touch more on this shortly. It is important to point out some of the terminology used in verse 27. As explained by author Richard D. Draper in his book Opening the Seven Seals, quote, the term abomination describes those things so vile that they rouse the instant wrath of God. In their worst form, they are called the abomination of desolation and are associated with the corruption of the temple, unquote. So the term abomination of desolation refers to the desecration of the temple. But as yet there is no temple in Jerusalem, so there is not a temple for the Antichrist to corrupt. As such, a temple will likely be built in Jerusalem during the first 3.5 years of this 7-year period. Sign 45, a temple built in Old Jerusalem. So for sign 45, we have the building of a temple in Old Jerusalem. Consider this quote from Joseph Smith, which we also discussed in part 4. Judah must return, Jerusalem must be rebuilt, and the temple, and water come out from under the temple, and the waters of the Dead Sea be healed. It will take some time to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple, etc., and all this must be done before the Son of Man will make his appearance. After the house of Israel returns in the second gathering, a temple will be built in Old Jerusalem. This is a much discussed sign because the Jews are very eager to build a temple in Jerusalem. There will be at least one temple built in Jerusalem, but there is the possibility for there to be two temples built. One temple will be built by the Jews themselves, and the second temple could be one built by the Latter-day Saints. Sign 46, Calamity number 5, also referred to as Woe number 1. Returning to the narrative in Revelation, after the first 4 calamities in Revelation chapter 8, next we have sign 46 in the beginning of Revelation chapter 9. This is the 5th trumpet blown by one of the 7 angels. While the first 4 calamities were bad, the last 3 calamities will be so terrible that they are referred to in the book of Revelation as woes. Revelation chapter 9, verses 1 through 4. And the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. Verse 3 explains that this calamity is a calamity of locusts swarming the earth. However, careful reading of Revelation chapter 9, verses 5 through 11, shows that they are not insects, but war machines. To John the Revelator, war machines of the 21st century would have been difficult for him to describe, so he used the best verbiage he could to explain what he saw in his visions. Sign 47, Calamity number 6, or Woe number 2. Coming right after trump number 5 in verses 1 to 12 is trumpet number 6. This is also described as a woe. Revelation chapter 9, verses 13 to 18. And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these 3 was the 3rd part of men killed, by the fire, and by the smoke, and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths. In this calamity we see the assembling of a massive army. It is described in verse 16 as 200,000, which, if literal, it would be comprised of 200 million soldiers. Oftentimes, numbers in ancient Hebrew culture were more figurative in nature, however. Thus, this could simply be John's way of saying that the assembled army will be extremely massive. Interestingly, in the Revelation narrative, John begins calamity number 6 in chapter 9, verse 13, but he doesn't call it concluded until chapter 11, verse 24. Therefore, we can likely assume that signs 48, 49, and 50 are all included in this calamity. Sign 48, the Siege of Jerusalem. For the next sign, we have the Antichrist laying siege to Jerusalem. At this point, the first 3.5 years of the 7-year period have elapsed, and the Antichrist breaks his treaty with Jerusalem and lays siege to the city. Revelation chapter 11, verse 2. But the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles. And the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. Notice that this verse provides a time period during which Jerusalem is attacked. 42 months, which is also 3.5 years. So after breaking his peace treaty with Jerusalem, the Antichrist and his armies are continually attacking Jerusalem for a period of 3.5 years. Sign 49, the 2 witnesses. In the very next verse of Revelation chapter 11, we have the introduction of the 2 witnesses. These 2 individuals have a very interesting role to play. They will be witnesses of Jesus Christ to the Jews, while at the same time they will be protectors of the city of Jerusalem, keeping the army of the Antichrist at bay. Notice that they will be in these roles for a period of 1,260 days, which is another way of saying 3.5 years. This is another indication that the siege of Jerusalem will last for a period of 3.5 years. Revelation chapter 11, verses 3 to 12. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouth, and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues, as often as they will. And when they have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where our Lord was crucified. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and an half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these 2 prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. And after 3 days and an half, the Spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. Once the appointed 3.5 years have elapsed, and the 2 witnesses have completed their ministry in Jerusalem, the Antichrist will ultimately overpower and kill them. How interesting is it that although the 2 witnesses will be the main protectors of Jerusalem during the siege, ultimately the Jews will rejoice over their death. This is because they will also be testifying of Jesus Christ, and the Jews will not be enthusiastic about accepting their testimonies. Sign 50, a large earthquake. Still in Revelation chapter 11, and not long after the ascension of the 2 witnesses, we have our next sign, which is a large earthquake in Jerusalem. Revelation chapter 11, verse 13. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of men 7,000. And the remnant were affrighted, and gave glory to the God of heaven. Right on the heels of the Antichrist overpowering and killing the 2 witnesses, we have yet another large catastrophe hitting Jerusalem. Sign 51, Calamity number 7, or Woe number 3. And then, after this large earthquake hitting Jerusalem, we are given the explanation of the 7th trumpet and its accompanying calamity. Revelation chapter 11, verses 15 and 19. And the 7th angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, The kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings, and an earthquake and great hail. Since this calamity is also considered a woe, these storms will be on a massive scale and will bring considerable destruction. This concludes all of the natural signs that are recorded in Revelation. The world will have endured considerable tribulation through all of these natural signs, but with the majority of the people having forgotten their God, these signs were likely necessary in order to compel the people to turn their hearts back to God. Sign 52, Jesus Christ appears on the Mount of Olives. In the midst of all these natural signs and tribulations, Jesus Christ will appear personally to the Jews in Jerusalem. Revelation chapter 14, verse 1. And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Sion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. It is quite interesting to me that when Jesus Christ appears to the Jews at Jerusalem, he will be accompanied by the 144,000 high priests. I feel that there must be some deeper meaning to their appearance here. Perhaps they had been ministering to all other cultures and peoples of the earth, except for the Jews, during the half hour of silence, and at this point they will begin to teach the Jews that convert. There certainly will be a huge need for teachers to explain the gospel to the Jews at this time of their conversion. They will be converted in heart because of the testimony of Jesus Christ himself, but they will need to be given instruction and guidance on the core principles of the gospel. Doctrine and Covenants section 45 gives us further details about Jesus Christ's visit to Jerusalem at this time. Doctrine and Covenants section 45 verses 48 to 50. And then shall the Lord set his foot upon this mount, and it shall cleave in twain, and the earth shall tremble and reel to and fro, and the heavens also shall shake. And the Lord shall utter his voice, and all the ends of the earth shall hear it, and the nations of the earth shall mourn, and they that have laughed shall see their folly. And calamity shall cover the mocker, and the scorner shall be consumed, and they that have watched for iniquity shall be hewn down and cast into the fire. This appearance of Jesus Christ is not to be confused with his appearance to the whole world on the day of his grand second coming. This will be a special appearance to the Jews, his own people, to prove to them his divinity and to show to them that he is indeed the Savior that they have been waiting for. Sign 53, the conversion of many of the Jews. Continuing on further in Doctrine and Covenants section 45, we are given details about the conversion of many Jews. Doctrine and Covenants section 45 verses 51 to 53. And then shall the Jews look upon me and say, What are these wounds in thine hands and in thy feet? Then shall they know that I am the Lord, for I will say unto them, These wounds are the wounds with which I was wounded in the house of my friends. I am he who is lifted up. I am Jesus that was crucified. I am the Son of God. And then shall they weep because of their iniquities. Then shall they lament because they persecuted their king. The scriptures say that one of the main purposes of our trials is to compel us to be humble and to turn our hearts back to God. Perhaps the purpose for all these intense trials being experienced by the Jews is to compel them to be humble and to put them in a spiritual state that would allow them to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior. Sign 54, the third period of missionary labor, the heathen nations. In the very next verse in Doctrine and Covenants section 45, verse 54, we are given another important sign. Doctrine and Covenants, section 45, verse 54. And then shall the heathen nations be redeemed, and they that knew no law shall have part in the first resurrection, and it shall be tolerable for them. Here is one last sign to include in this section, the commencement of the next period of missionary labor. Since this comes at the very end of this set of signs, this will likely carry over into the millennial period. This concludes part 5 of the Second Coming sequence. To recap, here are the signs that we covered in this video. Sign 42, calamities number 1 through 4. Sign 43, the Antichrist. Sign 44, a 7-year peace treaty. Sign 45, a temple built in Old Jerusalem. Sign 46, calamity number 5. Sign 47, calamity number 6. Sign 48, the siege of Old Jerusalem. Sign 49, the 2 witnesses. Sign 50, a large earthquake in Jerusalem. Sign 51, calamity number 7. Sign 52, Jesus Christ appears on the Mount of Olives. Sign 53, the conversion of many of the Jews. And then sign 54, the third period of missionary labor, the heathen nations. In part 6 of this series, we will cover the next section of signs, which are all related to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end. If you would like to view the subsequent videos in this series, please subscribe to the channel. Your questions and comments are all very welcome. Please provide them in the comment section below, and I will do what I can to address your input. However, please understand that comments which do not contribute to a healthy discussion will be removed. Also, if you have noticed anything which could be an error, or if you have further references that could contribute to this sequence of Second Coming signs and events, please provide your input in the comment section so that we can further improve and refine the sequence together. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.